The Broken Crown. Queen Naira stood at the crystalline viewport of her isolation chamber, watching the last rays of Proxima Centauri paint the asteroid belt in hues of crimson. The medical droids had just delivered their final verdict. Her genetic modification had failed. Like the hundreds of attempts before, her body had rejected the fertility treatments meant to allow her to bear an heir for the crystalline empire. The news wouldn't stay contained for long. Already, she could sense the palace's neural network humming with whispers of her failure. The crystalline empire had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years through careful genetic engineering, each ruler precisely crafted to be superior to the last. A barren queen was unprecedented, an aberration that threatened the very foundation of their society. The door chimed, and Naira didn't need to turn to know who it was. Enter First Minister Cax. The spindly figure glided into the room, his crystalline exoskeleton catching the starlight. "My queen, the High Council has reached a decision." Naira's shoulders stiffened. "And you are to be exiled to the prison world of Tartarus. A new queen will be selected from the genetic reserves." His voice was emotionless, as if announcing the day's weather rather than her death sentence. Tartarus was a frozen hell, where the Empire's worst criminals were sent to die slowly. "I see." Naira's voice remained steady, though her hands trembled slightly. "When?" "The transport leaves at dawn." Cax paused. "The Council wishes to avoid unnecessary complications." Naira finally turned, her silver eyes meeting his crystalline ones. "You mean they wish to avoid the possibility of my supporters causing trouble?" She smiled bitterly. How thoughtful of them. Once Cax had left, Naira activated her neural link to the palace's security network one last time. As queen, she still had access to certain restricted protocols, at least until dawn. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface as she initiated a carefully planned sequence of commands. If they wanted to exile her, fine, but she would choose her own destination. As the night cycle began, alarms blared throughout the palace. A minor reactor breach in the lower levels drew security away from the royal hangars. In the chaos, a small stealth ship slipped away from the capital, its navigation systems locked onto coordinates far beyond Imperial space. Naira had studied the uncharted regions extensively during her reign, searching for alternatives to the Empire's rigid genetic programs. She knew of places where different species had achieved their own forms of advancement, free from the crystalline technology that had both elevated and enslaved her people. The ship's AI chimed a warning as Imperial patrol crafts began pursuit. Naira's hands flew across the controls, activating the experimental cloaking device she'd had installed months ago. The patrol ships fell behind as she approached the quantum barrier that marked the edge of Imperial space. No crystalline ship had ever crossed that barrier. Their technology was said to fail beyond it. But Naira's ship was different, a hybrid of crystalline and conventional engineering she'd commissioned in secret. As the barrier loomed ahead, Naira took a deep breath. Time to find out if the legends are true. She pushed the engines to maximum thrust and braced herself. The barrier lit up like a new sun as her ship pierced it. Alarms screamed as systems fluctuated wildly. For a moment, Naira thought she'd made a terrible mistake. Then the ship burst through to the other side, and an unfamiliar starfield spread out before her. She was free. But freedom came with its own price. The hybrid systems that had allowed her to cross the barrier were now failing one by one. The ship's trajectory became erratic as the navigation computer shut down. Naira fought with the manual controls, trying to guide the dying vessel toward a habitable-looking planet she'd spotted on long-range sensors. As the ship plunged into the atmosphere, Naira caught glimpses of vast plains and rocky outcroppings through the flames of re-entry. The ground rushed up to meet her, and the last thing she saw before impact was a strange artificial structure in the distance, definitely not of crystalline design. She had found something new. Whether it would prove to be salvation or damnation remained to be seen. The human factor. When Naira regained consciousness, she found herself staring into a pair of eyes unlike any she'd seen before. They were brown, a color almost never seen among her people, and filled with an intensity that made her genetic enhancement protocols ping with warning signals. "Easy there," said a deep voice in an unfamiliar language. Yet somehow, Naira understood it. Her universal translator implant was still functioning, even if most of her other enhancements had been damaged in the crash. The owner of the voice was a tall, muscular being with tanned skin and dark hair. He wore what appeared to be some kind of mechanical exoskeleton, though far cruder than anything in the Empire. "I'm Marcus Chen, captain of the resistance cell on this rock, and you're lucky to be alive." Naira tried to sit up, and immediately regretted it, as pain shot through her body. "I'm Naira." She decided to omit her former title. "Where am I?" "Welcome to Haven's Rest, though that's a bit of an ironic name these days." Marcus helped her into a sitting position. They were in some kind of medical bay, but the technology was primitive by Imperial standards. It's a colony world, or was, until the consortium took over. Now it's just another resource extraction site for their war machine. Naira's translator took a moment to process consortium. When it did, her blood ran cold. The Crystalline Empire had another name among the outer worlds, it seemed. Marcus must have noticed her reaction. "You're running from them too, aren't you? Saw your ship come down. Never seen anything like it. Half crystal tech, half conventional. Didn't think that was possible." "It isn't, technically." Naira managed a weak smile. "The ship was an experiment. One that won't be repeated, I expect." Marcus leaned back against a worn metal table. "Well, you picked an interesting time to crash here. The consortium's been tightening its grip on the outer worlds, but they don't know about our little operation yet. We've been gathering intel, resources, and most importantly, people with a grudge against their perfect little empire." Naira studied him more carefully. Despite the primitive technology, there was something about these humans that intrigued her. They had an adaptability, a rawness that the carefully engineered citizens of the empire lacked. "And what exactly is your operation?" she asked. Marcus grinned, and Naira's enhancement protocols pinged again. There was something almost predatory in that expression. "We're going to hit them where it hurts. The Empire thinks its genetic engineering makes it invincible, but we found some interesting weaknesses in their crystal tech. Things they never thought to guard against because they're too focused on their precious genetic purity." He pulled up a holographic display, crude but functional, showing what appeared to be a crystalline manufacturing facility. Their quantum communication networks, their genetic modification chambers, even their basic infrastructure, it all runs on crystal tech. But crystals have natural frequencies. Hit them right, and they shatter. Naira's mind raced. She had studied the Empire's weaknesses extensively, but this was an angle she hadn't considered. "You're developing sonic weapons." "Among other things." Marcus nodded. "But we need someone who really knows their systems, their protocols. Someone from the inside." Naira thought of all her years of frustrated research, trying to find alternatives to the Empire's rigid genetic engineering. Of the cold faces of the High Council as they sentenced her to death for the crime of being imperfect. "I may be able to help with that," she said carefully, "but I want something in return." "Name it." The Empire's genetic engineering isn't just about maintaining power, it's about survival. Their basic genetic structure is becoming unstable after millennia of modification. Without constant adjustments, they'll begin to deteriorate. Naira met Marcus's intense gaze. "If we're going to bring them down, we need a solution for that, one that doesn't rely on their crystal tech." Marcus was silent for a moment, then smiled again. "Funny you should mention that. We humans have some experience with genetic adaptation ourselves. Natural selection's given us a few tricks that your Empire's perfect engineering never dreamed of." He helped her to her feet. "Come on. There's something I want to show you." Evolution's children. The research facility beneath Haven's Rest was a maze of repurposed mining tunnels, but it was what they contained that took Naira's breath away. Massive DNA sequencers hummed alongside quantum computers, while holographic displays showed genetic structures she'd never seen before. "This is impossible," Naira whispered, studying a particularly fascinating sequence. "These adaptation rates, they're orders of magnitude faster than anything in the Empire's databases." Marcus nodded, looking pleased. "Turns out when you let evolution take its course, instead of trying to control every little mutation, you get some interesting results. Humans evolved on a planet with rapidly changing conditions and extreme environmental pressures. Our DNA learned to adapt quickly or die." He pulled up another display, showing what appeared to be hybrid genetic structures. "We've been studying how to combine this adaptability with the enhanced capabilities your people engineered into themselves. The results are promising." Naira's hands flew across the interface, her remaining enhancements processing the data faster than any human could. This could work, not just as a weapon against the Empire, but as a genuine solution, a way to stabilize their genetic structure without requiring constant crystal tech intervention. "That's the idea." Marcus watched her work with obvious appreciation. "But we need someone who understands both sides, the Empire's engineering and natural evolution. Someone like you." Naira paused in her analysis. "Why are you showing me all this? You barely know me. I could be a spy." Marcus laughed. "A spy wouldn't have crossed the quantum barrier in a hybrid ship. Besides, our intel suggested the Empire was about to exile their queen for failing their fertility protocols. Timing fits." Naira stiffened. "You knew who I was." "We suspected." Marcus's expression grew serious. "Look, we need each other. You need allies who understand both tech and evolution. We need someone who knows the Empire's systems inside and out. Someone with the authority to make their people listen when the time comes." He gestured at the facility around them. "This isn't just about bringing down an empire. It's about saving them from themselves, showing them there's another way forward besides endless genetic engineering and crystal tech dependency." Naira thought about the cold precision of the Empire's genetic programs, the rigid hierarchy based on engineered perfection. Then she looked at the beautiful chaos of human DNA, its ability to adapt and overcome through trial and error. "Where do we start?" she asked. Marcus's grin returned. "First, we need to get you back to full strength. Those enhancement protocols of yours took a beating in the crash, and we got some ideas about how to improve them. Then we start planning our first strike." He led her to a more secure area of the facility, where a team of human scientists was gathered around what appeared to be a modified genetic reconstruction chamber. "Meet Dr. Sarah Chen, our head of genetic research, and my sister," a woman with the same intense eyes as Marcus looked up from her work. "Welcome to Evolution's playground, Your Majesty. Ready to help us change the galaxy." Echoes of thunder. 6 months later, Naira stood in the command center of Haven's Rest, watching as their first major operation against the Empire unfolded. The target was a seemingly minor crystal tech manufacturing facility on the edge of Imperial space, but its importance far exceeded its size. "Production facilities' defenses are down," Marcus reported, his fingers dancing across the tactical display. "Sarah's virus is working perfectly. Their systems think everything's normal." Naira nodded, her modified enhancement protocols processing the incoming data streams. The virus had been her idea, a hybrid of crystal tech programming and human computer code that the Empire's security systems couldn't detect. But it was Sarah's brilliant implementation that had made it work. "Team 2 in position." Sarah's voice came over the comm. She was leading the ground assault personally, something that still amazed Naira. In the Empire, leaders commanded from safe distances, protected by layers of security. "Remember," Naira addressed the strike teams, "we're not just destroying the facility. We need to capture their genetic database intact. Those records are crucial for developing the stabilization protocol." The operation went smoothly at first, too smoothly. They should have known the Empire wouldn't leave such sensitive data so lightly guarded. Multiple ships dropping out of quantum space. Marcus's tactical officer shouted, "Imperial signatures." Naira's enhancement protocol screamed warnings as she recognized the configuration. Those are Preserver-class battleships, the Genetic Council's personal fleet. Her heart raced. They knew we were coming. No. Marcus studied the tactical display intently. They suspected something was happening in this sector, but they didn't know what or when. This is a patrol pattern, not an ambush formation. We need to abort. Sarah's voice crackled over the comm, punctuated by weapons fire. We can't take on Preserver-class ships. But Naira was already seeing another possibility. Her enhanced mind raced through calculations, combining her knowledge of Imperial tactics with what she'd learned of human adaptability. "We don't need to fight them," she said. "We can use them." Marcus looked at her sharply. "What are you thinking?" The Preservers carry backup copies of the Empire's most critical genetic data. Standard protocol. Naira's fingers flew across the controls. If we modify Sarah's virus, we can trigger their emergency backup systems. Make them think the production facility's data is corrupted. Understanding dawned in Marcus's eyes. They'll download their backup copies to restore it. And when they do, we hijack the data stream. Marcus was already relaying orders. "Sarah, fall back to secondary positions. Naira, how fast can you modify that virus? With your sister's code as a base." 5 minutes. Naira was already deep in the programming, her enhanced mind working at maximum speed. But we'll only get one shot at this. Once they realize what's happening, they'll lock down their systems completely. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Sarah's teams fell back in seemingly panicked retreat, laying down covering fire that just happened to drive the Imperial forces toward optimal positions for data interception. Naira and Marcus worked in perfect sync, her crystal tech expertise combining with his tactical instincts. When the virus launched, it was like watching a dance they'd choreographed perfectly. The Imperial ships responded exactly as predicted, initiating emergency backup protocols. For 30 crucial seconds, their most closely guarded genetic data streamed across space, thinking it was restoring a corrupted facility. "Download complete." Sarah's triumphant voice came over the comm. "We got it all. All teams, emergency quantum jump," Marcus ordered. "Randomized coordinates, just like we planned." As their ships disappeared into quantum space, Naira caught a last glimpse of the Imperial battleships on the tactical display. They were still in standard patrol formation, not yet realizing that they'd just handed over the key to their entire genetic engineering program. "Think they bought it?" Marcus asked as they regrouped at their fallback position. Naira smiled. "They're so convinced of their technological superiority, they'll assume any data breach must be accidental. By the time they realize what really happened, we'll have already decoded their genetic templates. And then we show them what happens when you combine 10,000 years of genetic engineering with humanity's talent for adaptation. Natural selection." The next 3 months were a blur of breakthrough and setback, triumph and near disaster. Sarah's team worked around the clock, combining the stolen Imperial genetic templates with their research on human adaptive capabilities. Naira divided her time between helping them understand the crystal tech aspects and working with Marcus to plan their next moves. They were making progress, but time wasn't on their side. Intelligence from their network of sympathizers indicated that the Empire was beginning to suspect the truth about the production facility raid. Worse, their genetic degradation was accelerating faster than predicted. "We need to move soon," Naira told Marcus one night as they reviewed the latest reports. "The High Council is getting desperate. They're implementing more aggressive genetic engineering protocols, trying to force stability. Which will only make things worse in the long run," Marcus finished. "Sarah says they're backing themselves into an evolutionary dead end." "Exactly." Naira pulled up a simulation showing the projected results. Each improvement they make reduces their genetic diversity further. Within a generation, they'll reach a point of no return. Their precious crystal tech won't be able to save them then. Then let's make our move before that happens. Marcus pulled up a different display, showing troop movements near the Imperial capital. Our network's in place. The modified genes are ready. We just need a way to distribute them. Naira studied the tactical display, an idea forming. The Ascension Ceremony. Marcus raised an eyebrow. The what? It's held every 10 years. The entire Genetic Council gathers to reaffirm their commitment to genetic purity. Naira's enhanced mind was already calculating possibilities. They used the crystal tech networks to synchronize their genetic modifications across the entire empire. If we could hijack that network, we could distribute our stabilized genes to everyone at once. Marcus whistled softly. That's ambitious. It's also necessary. Naira met his gaze. The ceremony is in 2 weeks. We won't get another chance before the degradation becomes irreversible. The next 14 days were a frenzy of preparation. Sarah worked to miniaturize their genetic delivery system, while Marcus's teams infiltrated key positions around the capital. Naira spent hours refining their crystal tech virus, making it undetectable to even the most sophisticated Imperial security. The night before the operation, Naira found Marcus on the observation deck, staring at the stars. Having second thoughts, she asked. Not about the plan. He turned to face her. About what comes after. These people have spent millennia believing in genetic perfection. How do we convince them to accept a future based on adaptation and change? By showing them there's strength in imperfection. Naira stepped closer. Humanity taught me that. You survive because you adapt, because you embrace diversity instead of trying to engineer it away. She paused. The Empire needs to learn that lesson, or it won't survive at all. Marcus's hand found hers. Then let's teach them. Revolutions dawn. The Ascension Ceremony was everything Naira remembered. A display of crystal tech mastery and genetic engineering that would have awed any other species in the galaxy. The Great Hall of the Imperial Palace glowed with bioluminescent crystal formations, while the Genetic Council members took their places in ceremonial synchronization chambers. All teams in position. Marcus's voice whispered through Naira's enhanced comm implant. He was coordinating the operation from Haven's Rest, while she and Sarah led the ground team. Ready when you are. Naira, disguised as a minor council member thanks to Sarah's genetic modifications, took her place in one of the outer synchronization chambers. The familiar crystal tech interfaces responded to her touch, not realizing that her genetic signature had been altered. Initiating primary sequence, the First Minister's voice echoed through the hall. Prepare for genetic synchronization. As the crystal network hummed to life, Naira began uploading their modified virus. Sarah's voice came through her implant. Tense but controlled. Networks accepting the package. No signs of detection. The next few minutes were critical. If anyone noticed the subtle changes in the genetic templates before they were distributed, everything would fall apart. Naira kept her breathing steady, trying to appear as calm as the other council members around her. Synchronization at 30%. The First Minister intoned. Crystal Matrix Sable. Naira's enhancement protocols tracked the virus's progress through the network. It was working perfectly, piggybacking on the official genetic templates like a shadow. 60%. She could feel the changes beginning in her own body as the network distributed its modifications. But unlike the usual rigid improvements, these changes felt different. More natural, more adaptable. 90%. Suddenly, alarms blared. Anomaly detected in the crystal matrix. Someone shouted. Genetic templates show unauthorized variations. Too late, Naira whispered. We're past the critical threshold. The First Minister's voice rose in panic. Abort the synchronization. Purge the network. But the virus had already locked them out of their own systems. The genetic modifications continued spreading, not just through the council chambers, but across the entire empire via the crystal tech network. Chaos erupted as council members realized what was happening. Some tried to physically disconnect from their synchronization chambers, only to find that the process couldn't be stopped. "It's done," Sarah reported. "Template distribution complete." Naira stood, removing her disguise. "Members of the Genetic Council," her voice cut through the panic. "The changes you're feeling represent your salvation, not your destruction." "Treason," the First Minister shouted. "Guards, seize her." But the guards didn't move. They were experiencing the changes too, feeling their bodies adapt in ways the rigid imperial engineering had never allowed. "Your genetic engineering program was killing us," Naira continued. "Each generation more unstable than the last. We offered you a choice: adapt or die. You've corrupted everything we built." One council member wailed. "Thousands of years of genetic perfection, ruined." "No," a new voice spoke up. Sarah stepped forward, her human features drawing gasps from the council. "We've given you the ability to build something better. Your genetic templates now include humanity's capacity for natural adaptation. You're free from dependency on crystal tech, free to evolve." The council chambers erupted in argument, but Naira could see the change already beginning in their faces. The rigid, perfect features were softening slightly, becoming more diverse, more natural. "It's not just about survival," Naira addressed them. "It's about growth. About discovering what we can become when we stop trying to force perfection and start embracing change." Hours later, as the initial chaos settled into uneasy acceptance, Naira stood with Sarah and Marcus, who had arrived via quantum jump once the operation succeeded, on a balcony overlooking the capital. "Think they'll ever forgive us?" Sarah asked, watching the streams of confused but curious citizens below. "They'll do better than that," Naira replied. "They'll thank us, once they understand what we've given them. True genetic stability, true adaptability. They'll realize this was the only way forward." Marcus squeezed her hand. "And what about you? Ready to lead them into this new era?" Naira thought about the rigid queen she'd been, so desperate to meet impossible standards of perfection. She thought about everything she'd learned from these remarkable humans about adaptation, diversity, and the strength found in imperfection. "I'm ready to help them learn what humanity taught me," she said, "that the future belongs not to those who pursue perfection, but to those who embrace change." The sun set over the crystal spires of the capital, its light refracting through the transparent structures in new and ever-changing patterns. Like the empire itself, nothing would ever be quite the same again. But maybe, Naira thought, watching her people begin to explore their new potential, that was exactly what they needed.